This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jason Ballard. It's a real privilege to be with you today. We've got another really good, awesome show in store for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about how to start, grow, and scale a business. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Some of those aren't good. Some of those are kind of good. And some of those are probably the most recommended ways to do that. A lot of people that start business and get into business don't really understand that. They have really good ideas. They have a good product or a good service, and they're all excited to share that with the world, make money off of it, and be a millionaire and be on Shark Tank or whatever they're going to do. But the realities of business kind of kick in that process. And some people struggle. Most people do struggle, which is why roughly 72% of businesses go out of business in their first 5 years. And so today we've got an expert entrepreneur that has multiple businesses, successful businesses. He scaled to really great, epic proportions. That's going to walk us through that so you don't have to go through the pain and the suffering, and you can learn how to do this and how to do it well. So today we are really privileged to have Jeff Russell on the show today. Let me tell you a little bit about Jeff. Jeff is the founder of the Oak Ridge Financial Group, Oak Ridge Financial Investments, Glenmore Healthcare, and Clean Start Weight Loss. A lot of different companies he has started and has made very successful, but there's more. Jeff is also a best-selling author, a renowned speaker, and an accomplished entrepreneur. He has written his most recent book that he has written is called Fire Yourself First, and we're going to break that down today. But Jeff overall is an expert in helping business owners break free of the daily grind. And I don't know a business owner today that would not want to break free from the stresses of the quote unquote daily grind. So Jeff, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much, Coach Jason. Pleasure to be here.
Jeff, my goodness, you have a phenomenal background and career. You've got an exciting story and journey. So let's just kind of jump into it. How the heck did you get started in business? How did you figure out you were a quote unquote entrepreneur and kind of get all of this stuff going?
Well, it wasn't an obvious story. I didn't grow up with an entrepreneurial family. I didn't know any business owners really. My dad was actually in the Army. And so I was an Army brat moving base to base. And so where I grew up, it was very structured, right? You work your day 9 to 5 or whatever that may be, right? You follow the rules, you work hard, and you show good progress and you get promoted. So that was kind of the values that I was shown growing up, and I kind of followed those through. None of my parents went to college, so I was the first to go to college. So my parents were quite excited about that. So I did what you're supposed to do. You know, you go to college, you study hard, you get good grades, and then you have to go work for corporate America. So at the time, this is many years ago, I worked for probably about third, fourth largest company. It was called Xerox. Any of your people who are probably 30 and over know Xerox quite well. Any millennial probably doesn't even know what a Xerox is. But, you know, Xerox actually had a great tech. They invented the GUI, which is the basis of Windows and the Macintosh interfaces. They invented the mouse. They have a lot of technology background. So my undergrad was in computer science. So I got my degree in computer science, was ready to hit the world, go work for Xerox for quite a few years. And then I discovered that, you know, this wasn't I don't know what it was. There was just something that I would last about 4 or 5 years in a company, and then I would kind of get get too bored, right? I'm like, okay, I'm bored here. I want to go do something else. So you got to do the next ladder. Let's try and get a supervisor role or a manager's role. And so I went from company to company. And then I got pretty high up. I was a director at a very large insurance company doing financial services and that. And they laid me off and they gave me a big pile of money. They gave me a year's salary, but more importantly, they gave me coaching to find my next job. And so I'm like, yeah,
Hmm.
doing the coaching. So, I'm doing the Myers Briggs and all the personality tests. They're helping with my resume. I'm just working the system that, you're supposed to work. And one of the coaches came back and he said, Jeff, I actually don't think you're a good employee. I think you should look at starting your own business. Because when I look at what you like to do, your personality traits, they don't really lend themselves to a good employee. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's true, right? Probably gone through five. And I always work for big major companies, Fairmont Hotels, Xerox, huge company, Allianz, which own Fireman's Fund. So big, huge corporations. And I did well, but I was always like, there's a better way to do this. But in corporation, that's not how you play the game. It doesn't matter if there's a better way.
Yeah.
You have to play the politics. And that got tiresome after a while as well. And so this coach is saying, well, you could look at, getting a franchise or a business opportunity or just starting your business from scratch. And I didn't know anything about starting a business, right? That was like totally foreign to me. This is about 24 years ago. And he gave me this opportunity, which was you can become an equipment leasing broker. And you pay $10,000, you can go to St. Louis, and then you learn how to do the trade. And they'll help you and they'll do everything. So I'm like, okay, that sounds good. I'll go do that. So took my $10,000, went there, and they showed me the basics of running the business. And one of the things was that, you know what, you got to make probably 30, 40 calls a day. And I'm like, well, that's what you have to do. It's simple, right? See, I'm a rule follower. Maybe it's my army upgrading, right? Like if
Ah.
if you got to do this, I'm like, yep, just tell me what I need to do because I know nothing. Like I am totally open to learning whatever I need to do. And it probably was maybe 6 months in where I actually made my first sale. And I'm like, okay, this is a long slog, but my commission was about $15,000. So it was a good amount of money, covered my, expenses and stuff. So I was happy with that. And then my
Hmm.
second deal was with a physician, a doctor. And this doctor, I realized all he had to do is basically sign his name and he got like $250,000 worth of equipment. It was quick and easy. If it was a non-physician like
Hmm.
me and you, right, we would need 3 years of tax returns. We'd need to pull their FICA scores and, find out where their mortgage is and get banking statements. It was a pain. So I learned very quickly you follow the easy money, right? So I did the same deal with a doctor and I made the same amount of money as a non doctor, but it took me 2 hours versus 12 hours. So I'm like, okay, I'm
Hmm.
specializing in medical finance. So my first company evolved. So I took that base knowledge of doing equipment financing and then niched into medical. So I did cosmetic surgical centers, outpatient centers, urgent care centers. I financed the equipment in that and got known as the guy who does that. And what I found
Hmm.
too is people will pay if you package things up and make it easier for them. So I learned this very early on. So I would be the conduit. I always wanted to create the experience, I guess, so that it was easy for them, have a team in the background and do all the hard work. And this takes, I also work for Club Med and Fairmont Hotels. And the guest experience is very important, right? Like for Fairmont,
Hmm.
our motto was never say no without offering an alternative, right? So no matter what they ask, you're going to say yes, and then there may be a qualifier to that. And I've been asked some crazy stuff we can't really get onto in this show, but we do that. So I kind of took that mindset, that customer service mindset, into the business as well, and wanted to create like an experience so everyone knew Jeff takes care of you from A to Z, and it's all good to go. And so that was kind of the development into my first company. And then there was some pivots, right? And that's the nice thing about being an entrepreneur. It's not just the same thing year after year, right? I went through 2008, the credit crisis. I went through COVID, right? So you've got to navigate. And one thing that we really don't really take for granted is if you've got the guts to start your own business, that you have to trust your gut when you're making decisions, right? So really look deep in. So just because it's never been done that way, or it's always done this certain way, doesn't mean that you shouldn't change it up. Doesn't mean there's not an easier way to do it. And so from army
Hmm,
brat to corporate, top 10 companies in the country to entrepreneur, and I've never looked back.
my goodness. What a story, Jeff. I mean, and I can relate to that. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and at the time, I'm working in the construction business with my dad. I didn't really understand entrepreneurism. Entrepreneurism wasn't a buzzword back then, like it is today. And then I went into the military, and yeah, it's very structured and rigid, and policies and regulations, and there's all this formality. And I always wondered, like, why am I the guy that's always questioning things? Why am I the guy going against the grain? Why, I'd have bosses, come in there and say, Jason, this is a big enterprise. You just have to go with the system and trust the system. And there was that, well, it's the way we've always done it, and the regulations are written because somebody did something stupid 20 umpteen years ago, and this make sure we're safe and secure in what we're doing. And I'm like, yeah, but it takes 15 hours to do something. We can do it in an hour and a half. And I was always that guy. And then later in life, I figured out, wait a minute, I'm not a corporate guy, even though I'm in corporate settings, and I was always against the grain. Sometimes that caused problems, but in many cases I worked to my benefit, because I'd have people come to me and say, I don't know how you do it, but somehow, some way, you get the end result. And that's what really matters. So whatever you need to do that doesn't get you put in jail, whatever that needs to be, do it. And then later on, I'm like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Like I'm a leader. I'm a person that sees things that other people like. Oh, okay. And there's a lot of people out there that don't even know they have those skills. Like the coach, whoever you had as a coach, sounds like a great coach because they saw something in you that you didn't even see in yourself. And when they introduced you to this new concept, you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then you got into it, and it's like, bam, perfect fit. So did you feel good about that? I mean, did you feel that was right? I mean, how was that initial first couple of years for you?
Absolutely terrified. Um, but see, I'm the process guy. So they sold me that if you just do these things, you will be okay. So I'm like, okay, first month no sales, second month no sales, third month no sales. Like, things were, but I was still holding steady, right? Kind of doing the processes that I knew. And it's kind of almost like, if you're cooking in the kitchen, you start with the base recipe that, grandma already did, and then you start adding things, right? So until you have the base recipe done, then you can start tweaking things. And that's kind of what I did here. I trusted the experts to teach me how to be a great leasing broker and finance equipment sales. And then after that, I started adding my own secret sauce, right? Which I would take things
Yeah.
from that I learned in the hotel industry, things I learned in finance, as I know they like to have pretty little documents. So I didn't just give people, scribbles and some notes, right? It was formatted nicely so that it looked really good. And I'm sure most of these people in the banks just, oh yeah, that looks good, and just went through, right? So that, so there was that tweaking. Was I ever confident? No. You always have this thing called imposter syndrome, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, I didn't grow up knowing how to run a business. I didn't do all of this stuff. I'd never financed equipment for somebody. And you know what? You can learn that stuff. And so
Yeah.
that was one of my things. I read 6 business books a month for the last 20 years, ever since I started into the business. Probably when I was working in corporate America, I read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so that was while I was kind of commuting on the train, I would be reading this book. And that was the inspiration, I think, too. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, there's something. And I really gravitated to owning the business, right? He had your real
Yep.
estate and you have your business. And that I thought was interesting because I was in corporate America. I'm just trying to think, how can I leverage what I know? Like when you're negotiating, you can take that negotiating that you do, whether it's for your annual salary review or whatever, you're always negotiating in a company. And then you just take that and transfer it into your business. And now when you go to the bank or you're negotiating with a new client, you still have those skills involved.
Yeah. Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki is an amazing business person and leader. He thinks really big, really, really big, and very creative, very innovative. I mean, even years ago, just being innovative, how to leverage money differently, using other people's money to do things without using your own money. I mean, it's pretty interesting. One of my big takeaways from from that specific book was there's two kinds of people in the world. It's not the haves and the have nots. It's not the rich and the poor. It's the informed and the uninformed.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people think they're informed, are actually really not informed, and they make decisions thinking they're making the right decisions, but they're not really truly informed quality decisions. And so, awesome book, highly recommend it to anybody. So tell me, as you got started in your business journey and you started making some sales, you're like, okay, I'm starting to kind of come together, starting to click. Um, was there a point, Jeff, where you questioned, whether you're doing the right thing? Was there a point where you ever like second guess yourself in this process and want to jump to another direction or jump to something new that you thought could work better? Did you ever go through any of that?
Yeah, many times. And so the longer you've been in business, the more you're going to do this. 2008 comes to mind because remember, I started this equipment financing business. That was the first business I started. Now we have the
Mm,
big 2008 hits. All the banks stopped lending, right? Just stopped. And so those doctors that I would get $250,000, one page done deals, I had nowhere for them. Now, what was interesting was maybe 2 years before that, 2006, 2007, I financed a lot of surgical cosmetic equipment. I actually financed the first medical spa in Manhattan. And so now there's medical spas around the entire country, but that was kind of the prototype. And so a lot of these doctors would be buying this equipment and they didn't know how to use it, like lasers, tattoo removal lasers,
mm,
and equipment like that. And I would say, look, I said, help this doctor in Newport Beach set up. Why don't you go talk to him? He'll tell you what he did. Oh, I talked to this other doctor, and it got to the point where those doctors said, okay, Jeff, stop sending people to me because I'm too busy, right? Like, okay, I don't have time to do this. And then it was like, So I thought, well, maybe what we should do is I'll go interview those doctors one time and create a training program that I can sell as like a bonus for the physicians who get this equipment financing. So I started this training, and my wife was at the time, she was a technical writer. So she could make things look pretty, right? So I don't know how she did it, but
Wow.
anyway, she took the documents, bound them up. They look fantastic. Presentations are very important. It's how things look,
Yep.
how you experience them is very important. So again, I learned this by accident. She just happened to be a technical writer. I'm like, hey, honey, you're going to be creating manuals for us right now. And so we
Congratulations, you just got promoted.
exactly.
An opportunity of a lifetime,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
bet she was very thankful.
And so we did that and we started doing this training just as like a side gig. So kind of like, here we are. Now all of a sudden 2008 hits and we're actually doing probably close to six figures a month in this training. So it actually added up. And
Wow.
when that dried up, so basically this is very similar to what, so it's interesting how things repeat themselves. Here's my tip for people. If everything's going super well and it's awesome, you're making the best money you've ever made, something's going to happen. And you should be prepared when that happens. And so don't just assume it's just going to get better and better and better. But you know what? It does, right? So 2008 happened, wiped out my financing business, right? For about 2 years. It took 2 years to recover. If I didn't have the
Mm,
side income of the training company, then we wouldn't have had any money. So I'm like, I always listen to your customer. And if they're asking you for something and they're willing to write a check, then you offer it to them. And now with the tools that are available, it's very easy. Like we utilize ChatGPT and AI, and we can create a course in that in a matter of a week, where it used to take 3 or 4 months to do.
mm.
And so there's a lot of kind of people you can leverage, right? Contractors, and there's a lot of services like I think Upwork and Fiverr and
Yep.
utilizing contract.
The freelance market, yeah.
Yeah. So never don't think you have to hire someone full time. If it's just kind of a gig thing, right? Just hire someone to do that. And so that wiped out the whole business. And that, in effect, I had two businesses at that time, and the one became the big one. And it actually is still the big one today. The physician training, medical training has done really well for us. And guess what happened in COVID? Here we are doing live training. COVID shuts us down. We go from multiple six figures a month to $3,000 in March of COVID. Like
Wow.
it just okay, like doesn't pay payroll. So we have with Houston, we have a problem, right? So what did we do? We took
Wow.
all that all those training materials, we put them online, created an online course. Now we make more money on online training than we do in our live training. So as things kind of went, we didn't really stray, like we didn't do a 360, we did a pivot, right? The
Yep.
medical financing to medical training. And then if medical financing kind of took a dive, then we had the medical training that would do that. And then I've since opened clinics and, I have six businesses now. So things will happen and it's just expect them. And you know what? To me, it was a challenge. I'm like, awesome. When COVID hit, wow, okay, it slapped me pretty. I never thought it was going to be as bad as it was or how much of an
Right.
impact it was. But that is when you get down and you think, what do people want? Right? How can I help people?
Yep.
And if you have a solution to help people, they're going to pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Spoken like a true entrepreneur, right? You are in something, you see an opportunity, somebody's asking for something, talking about something, struggling with something, they're like, and you connect two dots together and you're like, another opportunity, right? Another part of your portfolio, another offering that can add value, right? Because people, are caught up in their busy day-to-day lives and they just need what they need. And then we're in a service industry, we're in a service world right now. Products are great, but we're really in the service industry and it's about the experience. I don't care if you're selling crap on Amazon or what, no matter what that is, how you're delivering that matters. You can go on Amazon and buy, your book that we'll talk about here in just a second, and that's great. But if Amazon doesn't deliver it when they say they're going to deliver it, it makes everybody look bad. And expectations are now coming in down here. at a lower level, people in the world that we live in of instant gratification and high expectations of consumer demand immediately sets precedence in that brain. So I think the things that you are really emphasizing as far as that customer experience, that is business. That is the future of business. And if you don't leverage technology and data and all of these different kind of tools out there and techniques, and not lose that human touch, not lose that human connection. The biggest complaint that I hear all the time is, yeah, I had an issue and I couldn't get a hold of the company that I had the issue with. They have chat bots, they have, there's no phone number. You call a 1-800 number and go through 8 zillion options. And like that whole thing, that everybody hates that. Everybody hates it. And you start losing that customer engagement. Technology is great, but at the end of the day, people want to talk to somebody that can solve the problem. I personally have had some challenges in my life that required somebody to intervene and to fix some goofy, weird thing that was going on. And I went through the process and it didn't work. As soon as I finally got the right buttons pushed and got somebody on the phone, they're like, "Oh, yeah, sure, we can do that." And boom, within a minute or two, it's over. The experience is critical. So, Jeff, I want to kind of pivot. Speaking of pivoting, we're going to pivot a little bit here in this conversation because I wanted to get into a couple of things I think are huge and really valuable to folks. You mentioned you got multiple companies. We've talked about kind of the earlier phases. So you have successfully grown, you successfully scaled, and then you come up with this concept that you end up writing a book about called Fire Yourself First. So why? What inspired you to write this book? What is this fire yourself? Like, who fires themselves as the boss? Like, talk to us about that and what that means.
Well, for so many years, right, I was pretty proud of working 60, 80 hours a week, right? And I was the hero,
Yeah.
first in, last out. I was the guy just grinding it. And I enjoyed doing it and I was good at it, right? And that's one of the traps. Just because you're good at something and you do it very, very well doesn't mean you should be doing it, right? So, I guess most of my regrets are not hiring fast enough and doing things I
Mm,
shouldn't have been doing, right? I know back when I started my first company, the first thing I hired for was a bookkeeper, right? Because I hate doing accounting, right? So I'm like, I outsource a bookkeeping, and then the CPA, of course, right? I'm not a CPA, so we're very natural about outsourcing that type of activities, but we don't think about, well, do you have an executive assistant, right? Should you be handling your emails? Should you be doing that? Or should you be actually meeting that big customer, creating a joint venture that can make
mm,
your business tens of millions of dollars? Where's your money time better spent? Hitting junk mail, or having lunch with somebody who could actually quadruple your revenues, right? So think about where your most valuable time is. And so what happened was I was offered 8 figures for one of my businesses a couple of years ago. And it was a good valuation. It was a fair valuation. So, for all intents and purposes, I should have accepted this valuation because, and this is the other thing, getting to this level, I was always a member of a lot of peer groups and I always had coaches. My coaches evolved over the time because what you need evolves over time, right? So, I was a member of
mhm,
EO and Vistage and Genius Network and Strategic Coach. Some I'm still a member of because I've kind of gone to that other level, and others that I've just, yeah, my time with them is done because I've just moved on beyond that. I never kind of love to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be kind of the dumbest one. That's when you really learn and grow. And so I'm offered this 8 figures. So I'm like, okay, this is good. This is what I'm supposed to do because all those organizations tell you have to sell. That's the big deal. You're grinding it to sell your company for a big dollar amount. And then you got your money and you walk away. Well, I can't tell you how many friends of mine, so one sold his company for $60 million, and I had to basically talk him off the ledge every few months, right? He was contemplating suicide because it was so
Mm.
distraught. And I remember my dad when he retired from the army, and he was 55. So he's in one of those early, he was career, right? He was 18, 7. I don't
Yeah.
even think he was legal. I think he had to get his dad, who was in the
Very few people were back
yeah,
though, yeah, back
exactly.
then, you
So,
know?
so he was young. So he did his 30 plus years, but he got the early package and he just didn't know what to do. Like, one day you're, in charge of a whole group or organization. Next day you're at home at the kitchen table. So it's kind of a big thing. So I was thinking, what would I do?
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I love my business. Why would I sell it? I'm only 54. So it's not like I'm like 84, 74, that it's just like I've got plenty of wind and excitement and desire to do a lot of things. So I'm like, well, why should I sell it? Well, because you're supposed to sell it. And it's like, you know what? That advice isn't working for me. And I was thinking, if I want to keep
Mm.
it, I'm only going to do what I like to do. So at that point, I made a goal and I said, you know what? I'm going to work 10 days a month. That's it. Right. And I'm not going to work any more than that. And I'm going to keep this business and I'm going to use it like an ATM. It's going to generate money for me. And I'm going to only do in that business what I absolutely love to do. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? And then I was thinking
Mm.
back as I started this business 11 years ago with my partner, and she had a full time job. I had a full time job. So we really didn't have time to really get involved with this business. And so, what did I do? Coming from corporations and the army and that, standard operating procedures, right? Here's your book. And then another wonderful book I think every entrepreneur should read is E Myth, right? So, it's the
Yep,
processes.
Michael Gerber,
Yeah,
yep.
absolutely. Do I believe in the franchise system? No. But the systemization of your business, oh, that's bombshell. That's critical. And so I had all these policies and all these, how we open up, how we close, how we do everything. Hired our first person, and now we have 6 people. They hire each, they run the business, they do everything. I work an hour a month in that business, and it's grown to a multi-million dollar business. And I looked at, what did we do there? Well, it was by accident. We didn't really know what we were doing. We're like, okay, we got full time jobs and this business has to run without us. And so this is what we're going to do. So I took those processes that I use in that business, and then I applied it to 3 of my other businesses, totally different industries. None of the industries are the same. So one's service,
Yeah.
one's products, one's people, storefront, right? All different businesses. And I found that there was common threads that made them work really well. So it wasn't overly complicated. When I turned 50, the things that I could remember lessened. Okay, sorry, but this is going to happen as you age. And so I usually keep my list to 5 items or less. And so when I was thinking about how did I actually create these businesses that run without me, and it came down the 4 steps. And that was the basis of fire yourself first. Now, I'm not a consultant. I don't have workshops on this. I don't do anything. The reason I wrote the book was my business cost me my first marriage. Okay.
Mm.
So my regrets are not being there with my kids when they were younger. They're 23 and 20 now. They're in college and they're wonderful and love them to death. But I can't get back that time when they were 6 years old, 5 years old, 12
Mm.
years old, right? And that was a big regret of mine. And because I was so focused on growing the business, right? And why? It was my ego. When I look back at some of the stuff I was doing, I'm like, why am I doing that? Just because I can do it well doesn't mean I should be doing it. I gave up sales, probably about 10 years ago, right? That was me. I was the sales guy. I had to do the sales. Yeah, but I trained someone to do sales. I recorded my calls. I set up training so that they could do it better than I could in the end. right? Because that was their focus, right? You're so focused. You have finance, you have sales, you have marketing, you have operations, you have all these things are responsible for. You can't be an expert in all of them, right? So hire
Mm-mm.
that salesperson, hire that marketing agency. We don't need a marketing in team and how we have a couple of people, but we do two agencies that have a dozen people each, that we're leveraging their knowledge so that we don't have to focus on that, and we focus on our core business, giving our customers what they want and exceeding their expectations. So that's very important. And so when I look at it, the the first step was your personal why, not your business why. Why are you in business? Who cares? Let's look back of why you started the business, right? Because it's what happens is you start your business, and we have to think back at how what we did and why we started it. We wanted freedom of time, we wanted money, we wanted all these opportunities, and then we get kind of sucked into it and we forget about that. So let's think back of why you actually became an entrepreneur, business owner, and what you wanted to do. And are you doing the things today that are going to get you there? And I would just guess that you're not. And so I'm like, okay, I'm working 10 days a month. Where am I going to get that time? I got 20 days. So I went into one company and I optimized my time. So the one I spend maybe 3 hours a month in now, where it used to be 3 or 4 days a month. And so I
Mm.
started getting back and making sure I had the right people in place, make sure they knew what winning looks like, right? So for me, um, people need to know what winning looks like. I have these things for employees called scorecards, and for the owner, I have a dashboard. The scorecards kind of funnel into the dashboard. So I always
Mm-hmm.
like them to know, here are your metrics. And again, do they have 15 things on their metrics? No, there's three, right? For one in my business, and this is an important one, for that business, every point one of a Google star rating below five costs us about 10, 20,000 a month. So if we're 4.8. If we go down to 4.5, that's literally going to cost me $50,000, $60,000 a month in lost revenue. If I went to a 4.2, we would
Mm.
be out of business because no one would come to us. You can't, so if your
Mm-mm.
business is really geared to reviews, then it's really important that that's a KPI, right? A key performance indicator, a key number. So for all my employees in that business, the number of 5-star Google reviews is part of their requirements, right? That's if you want to get your bonus and keep a job here, like we need to see so many of those in a month. So every business is different. You're going to have custom numbers for each of your business, but we need to know what winning looks like. And so hiring the right people and then having them know what's expected of them really will allow you to do so much more. That's what's going to free you up. Because once you have those
Mm.
numbers and you're confident of them and that they're doing the numbers that are most important, you can actually do more.
Yeah. Well, a couple things I took out of that, Jeff. One is people overcomplicate business, and what you're talking about is simplifying business down to the really most important things. Right, a lot of stuff you're talking about, um, I learned a lot of those things from the book of The Four Disciplines of Execution. Sean Covey, the son of the great Stephen
Yeah.
Covey, in partnership with somebody else, wrote that book, and they're talking about the scoreboard, how every sport has a scoreboard, and the scoreboard dictates what plays you call on the field to give you your chance to win more often than others, right? And that book is and it's about simplification. It's about really boiling things down to what really truly matters the most. Your really top priorities. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens in business processes and checklists and SOPs and marketing and sales and finance and accounting and IT and da, 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 da. I mean, there's all these things, but that's why you hire those experts to manage those and deal with those things, right? But at the end of the day, what is the most important things that matter the most in business? And I love the way you've simplified that down into some just basic blocking and tackling type components to where, a leader and the other leaders that are running in your business with you can quickly take a quick snapshot in time of where are we this month? How does that compare to last month? Okay, either we're doing the same, we're doing better, we're doing worse. Okay, what do we need to do to make some adjustments there and call a different play for next month to achieve X goal? And that, man, that is super important because a lot of business people get caught up in all of the emails and the phone calls and the gripes and the complaints, and what I like to overall categorize as noise of the business, and they lose focus on the really wildly important things. Another takeaway I got from you, Jeff, is you're a leader, because firing yourself first, while sounds bold and crazy, and people are like, what? You're going to fire? You're the boss. You got to make the decisions. Like, what's going to happen? This sounds like chaos about to erupt, right? This is crazy. It's really not, because leaders, page out of your book, Jeff, leaders simplify things, and leaders do three basic things to be a successful leader. One, they motivate others to do things to where they take ownership of it like it was their idea. Number two, leaders grow new leaders. And number three, leaders set people up for success. So if you didn't take anything away from today's podcast, take away that you grow and scale and become successful and survive crisis, survive economic downturns, survive disruption in your business by getting your butt out of the way and allowing other people to do what they need to do, so you make sure that the things that need to be done in your business the way it needs to be done is done the right way, focused on the right things. And so I think it's bold, and I think it's brilliant that you fired yourself in order to give yourself time to live the life you really want to live, which is why you went into business for yourself anyway, and grow that next generation of leaders that can, whether you show up or whether you don't one day, the business keeps running and it runs smoothly. So congratulations to all your success, man. This is really exciting.
And one of the side benefits of this that I didn't quite realize, so if a lot of the things I learned were by accident, right? I'm not going to say I'm the smartest guy in the
Right.
room. It's like things happen. Now, if you're not critical to the business, guess what happens to the valuation of your business when you go to sell? Now, all of a sudden, you've
Mm,
just increased your valuation by 5 or 10 times because you're not a key component of it. So everyone out there who has a business and you're the business, so you couldn't just go for two. Like I was just 3 weeks in Tahiti. There was no, well, there was Wi-Fi, but I wasn't doing any Wi-Fi, gone, but done. I didn't get one business related anything while I was gone for 3 weeks.
mm,
If you can't do that, then your business, you are the business. So when you go to sell your business, with so many business owners, their retirement strategy is it's going to be funded by the sale of your business. So make sure that when you're ready to do that, you're planning this out 3 to 5 years, maybe longer. You want to extricate yourself from the business. So when it's time to sell, you're going to get a higher multiple because it doesn't rely on you. And the other thing I found is when I step back, you're right, if you show good leadership, and it doesn't mean to be grinding it in the trenches. Sometimes you do that, right? Like, hey, you know what? When I was in the hotel business, I saw garbage on the floor. I never hesitated to pick that garbage up. It wasn't beneath me. I was a director. I could have, hey, housekeeping, come here and do that. No, never would cross my mind, right? We're going to do, you have to
mm,
have that service attitude. And so when your employees see that, right, that naturally will go. Now let them use their technical knowledge to make the decisions and grow your business. So what happened 2 years ago? When we look at today, I'm making more money than I've ever made. I'm working less than I've ever worked. So I'm like, this is awesome. And it opens up a lot of doors. I was so busy grinding it and eating lunch at my desk that I didn't have a chance to go out and have lunch with other colleagues and other people in the industry or other
Mm,
people in my community. Once I had that time, I'm investing in real estate, apartment buildings that I never would have found out about because I never made those conversations an important part of my life before.
mm,
So it's really interesting. I've made, even with all those kind of side deals and conversations and being part of the conversation, that's where a lot of the wealth is built. So if you have a business because you want to build your wealth, you want to kind of look at, you need to be in those conversations. You need to be in those rooms. So you grinding it, for 12 hours in your office or your home office is not necessarily going to get you there. And so you kind of just have to take that leap. Like when you started your business, oh, I'm just going to try and do this. Trust me. And I don't know if you've ever gone on your family vacation. Like, how hard do you work the Friday before you're going? That's what it's like every day when I work
wow.
my 10 days. I am efficient. I am focused. I don't do, I don't screw around. I'm not, everything is very funneled. I'm very focused and I have a very good filter. You have to have a good filter.
Mm,
And it's like, should I be doing this? If not, who? So, and I always tell my new people that I'm coaching, through some of the training I do, always think about who, not you. Who is going to do this? Because it's not going to be you in 3 or 6 or 9 months. You shouldn't have to be required to do any operational stuff in your business. As a leader and the owner, you're responsible for culture and strategy. Take that time and think about what's going to happen and impact you
mm,
in 3 to 5 years. Like I just had a breakfast this morning with a local group of business owners that I started, and we're called the Future Visionaries. And our conversation is about what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years and how's that going to impact us. What housing
mm,
going to be like? How are our employees going to be able to afford housing when interest rates go up? What is the food costs? What is like the expenses? How much of a raise are they going to be expecting? Right, like, is AI going to take over? Is it going to automate? One of the guys owns a $800 million trucking company. So we're talking about how is automated driving going to impact the trucking industry
mm,
in 3 to 5 years. You have to be thinking about that today. You don't necessarily have to action it, but if you want to really be successful in your business and see things clearly, so in a year or two from now, when something happens, it was actually the seed from 2 years ago of a conversation you
yep.
had with a local business leader that actually made that in your awareness, maybe just in your subconscious, but huge, huge. So the benefits. So when I say it's made me more money, yeah, my businesses as well, plus my investments and things, because now I
Mm.
spend a lot of times managing my family office.
Wow. Powerful. Powerful. Your life and the life that you want to live is about you, but your business is not. If you're the center of the business, find a way to get out of it. There's plenty of tools, resources, people, coaches, consultants, whatever that can help you do it. You're not the only one. You're one of hundreds and hundreds of millions of people in that same situation, but the smart ones that really know how to grow and scale and truly want to enjoy the fruits of life and all the wonders in it and go to Tahiti for 3 weeks and really enjoy quality time with their families, figure out how to fire themselves first. And so, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show. You gave us some really awesome things to think about and consider that can, really make a difference in people's lives. I mean, the stuff that you talked about today is really heart and soul. And so, thank you for being on the show, Jeff. If people want to learn more about you, they want to, get access to the book, they want to ask questions, how do they contact you?
The best way is we set up a website called, it's very simple, fireyourselffirst.com. And so if you go to that website, yeah, there's links to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Audible, where you can download the book or get buy the book there. And as well, for your listeners, and I know this will be helpful, is I like to document everything that I do. So I actually created an 11-step hiring process. So if you're going to be firing yourself
Mm.
first, you're probably going to need maybe some new team members, maybe not today, maybe in 6 months from now, but you can go download my 11-step hiring process, which I discuss in more detail in the book on the website as well, fireyourselffirst.com. And on the bottom of the website is my LinkedIn. It's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Just click on that, connect with me through there. That'd be awesome.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Feel free to reach out and get access to his book, read his website, learn more about Jeff and what he does and what his companies do to do some really amazing things out there. And thank you for your contributions. And it sounds like you've touched a lot of lives in a lot of positive ways. So thank you for that. That's it for today's show, everybody. Stay tuned for next week. Next week, we got a really, really cool topic to talk about. We're talking about how to fund your business, ensure you don't run out of money in the process, which is the number one thing that causes people problems. So you won't want to miss that. Look forward to talking with you next week. Have a great one, everybody.